Kathy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm super excited to chat with you. Your story is told in The Miracle Season, which is also a book that you wrote. And we're going to dive into all the different elements of your story and of the book. But take me through. Now, you were the volleyball coach at Iowa City West. And I have the years here. It was 1987 to 2000 and then 2005 to 2013. That's a long time to be coaching.
It was a long time. I retired when my values became skewed and losing was worse than winning. And that's not what high school sports is about. And so I took some time off and got conned into coming back by a group of parents who promised me a lifetime supply of Scotch brew bars. That lasted until their kids graduated. Like, what part of that is a lifetime? But I think I was meant to come back and be there for that season when the tragedy occurred. And it seemed like God had a bigger plan in mind than us mere mortals. So, yeah, that's why I was there when everything unfolded in 2011.
So let's talk about 2011. Caroline found. She seemed like a really incredible girl, just full of life. Tell us a little bit about Caroline.
As a teacher, as an educator, you appreciate those rare students like Caroline found that include everybody. She was so inclusive, kids with disabilities, there were minorities moving in from Southside Chicago, kids who were homeless. And she was the most popular kid in school, kids with Down syndrome. And those were the kids she embraced and brought into her circle. And she said, Brez, I was born with a blessed life. And each day I asked myself, what can I do for somebody else? Which is, when you think she was 16 when she told me that. And you think, my God, there's so many life lessons to be learned from this 16-year-old kid that recognized, first off, how good she had it. And then two, wanted to spread that goodness and kindness to other kids.
That's a rarity. And especially nowadays, I mean, this is not that long ago. This is 2011. It seems like Caroline and her family were a family of faith. It seemed like that was a part of who they were in their DNA. And it sounds like that carried through to how she handled herself, in school. I mean, you said she was the most popular girl in school and had those attributes. That's a really rare thing.
It really was. And she was just she just wanted to make people happy. And she was a cut up. I mean, she wasn't an easy kid to teach at times, and she wasn't a kid easy to coach, because she was just off the wall. I mean, she did it to make people laugh. And she was a tremendous leader for a coach because she wanted the players around her teammates, to be better. And she would put them ahead of her when it came to honors and awards. And she was just an amazing, amazing kid.
Now the story is told in The Miracle Season again. And if you're just tuning in to this film is streaming right now on Pure Flix. And it's an incredible film that tells an amazing story based on a true story. And we're talking about that now. And you were there center stage for this story as the coach. Now, I want to talk about the event in 2011. It happened right before the season was starting, the volleyball season. And Caroline was lost, and her death, I would imagine, sent shockwaves through the community and through the school. What was it like for you? And again, people can watch this in the film, but hearing it from you is so powerful. What was it like for you to pick up the pieces from that tragic event and move forward with a team of women who were really affected by that?
Well, it was like the air got sucked out in the room. That's how much energy she brought. So when we met that first morning, after she died, I mean, I watched them sobbing, and then around our gym, we met at 6 a.m. and we left the lights off because I couldn't even face my own grief, much less looking into the faces of my players. And then I realized we had hundreds of kids and adults around the outside perimeter of our gym that were coming just to be closer, And I thought, oh my God, we have all these lost souls, and so many. This is not rare, right? 7 to 8 kids die every day in motor vehicle accidents. And ours wasn't any more tragic than anybody else's. We just happened to be in the middle of a high school sports season, or at the beginning of it. And how do you move on? I mean, at that point, it wasn't about winning or losing, and I'm a very competitive person. It became about healing and how do we get through this together. And I knew the only way us 17 people in this team, coaches and players, was going to be if we did it together. And that was my entire focus, is we have to do this together. It didn't matter about winning or losing. It was about healing and moving forward.
Yeah, you could have all given up. A lot of people in the face of tragedy like that, in the wake of tragedy, they would say, I just need a break. We need to step away. You know, it's continuing on is not the right thing to do right now. But it doesn't seem like that was your posture. Your posture was, we're gonna move forward. How hard was that for you and for the team in the beginning of saying, we're gonna march on, we're not gonna stop?
You know, it was interesting because we always prided ourselves at 3:15. We wanted that to be the best part of our athletes' day. They stepped on the court, and this is what they're waiting for all day. And that's what Caroline loved, the sport. She was a 3-sport athlete, but volleyball was her passion. And so those kids went from this diameter of the court meant joy to them, to stepping inside those lines meant grief. And it was like pulling a Band-Aid off every single day that they stepped in that court. It went from joyful to painful. And so for them to keep pushing each day, because one of the first things they said was, the morning we met, one of the girls stepped up and said, we will never cry between these white lines. Caroline would hate it. If you have to cry during practice, leave the court. And that's really how they pushed forward, that they were doing it for her. You know, we kept saying, you can't win for Caroline. You can play like Caroline. But there were so many reminders, you know, every time. You can't lose your setter. That's your quarterback of your team. And we had no backup setter. So there were so many glaring reminders every second of every practice.
So, you know, obviously you guys go on to triumph, and I don't want to spoil all the details because I want people to watch that. But when you look back at everything that happened and the fruit of the labor of moving forward in that grief and continuing on, what most shocked you or stays with you about that time now that you've had years to sort of look back on it and ponder it?
That those girls kept moving forward. You know what I mean? That they would even want to step on that court. You know, one thing we didn't mention was that summer, Caroline's mom got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So Caroline was on the way to visit her mom on a borrowed moped without a helmet and hit a tree that was maybe 9 inches in diameter. And that's how she died instantly. And her mom died 12 days later. So, I mean, it was just bam, bam, you know. And so I think about the strength and resilience of these young 17-year-old kids to push forward. I'm in total awe of them still. And I think that, you know, the LD Entertainment took a flyer to make this movie. This was the first and only sports movie ever made about a high school girls team. And they knew it wasn't going to be making them huge money because it's not this mass appeal about football, you know, but they wanted that message out there. And so for that reason, I'm eternally grateful, because even now it's being released in other countries. So I'm hearing from Nigeria every day, and the Philippines, and Egypt, and these kids saying, we want to live like Line, and because Caroline was nicknamed Line. And to know that she's affecting these millions of people around the world that I've heard from and been in contact with, it's so rewarding to know that this kid's legacy, to live like Line, live with kindness, live with empathy, live with passion, is still living on.
How did this story and how did Caroline affect your faith in your heart and your life? You know, what the last 10, to 12 years now, how has this changed you?
Well, I mean, immediately changed me I would never have hugged a player and said, I love you, and we say that to each other now all the time. Those were always those barriers I wasn't willing to cross. So the immediate impact was that. Now I'm really fortunate. I get to go around the country speaking to groups, adults and kids. I love getting into schools and talking to kids. I just booked 3 for the next couple weeks coming up, just to talk about Caroline and inclusion and finding those kids with autism and special needs and who doesn't have a friend. And it was really rewarding. One group I talked to, and I said, you know what, your rule should be no one eats alone. And they sent me pictures. I wasn't even on the road an hour going back home, and they had pictures up all over their school saying, no one eats alone. And it was like, oh my gosh, they get it, and I just think Caroline would be so proud to know that she's had this effect on people still about living life with kindness.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. I have a 9-year-old, and I tell her all the time, if she comes home and tells me, oh, this particular kid, and she doesn't really fully understand, disabilities and all that. So we've been talking about it. This particular kid can't speak very well, or this particular kid is sitting alone, to the point that you're making. We're always telling her, make sure that you are talking and being friends with that kid. And it's so important that we raise kids with that compassion, right? And here you have this amazing story, and you have Caroline, and you are going around, you're speaking about it. Now, at some point, you made that decision, which I think is a fascinating one, to say, I want to share this story with the world. And that happened through a book. It happened through this film. What led you to make that choice to say, hey, that's a bold choice to go out and put the story out there in that form?
There was such an important message to go out there. And I'm not a writer, right? And I spent all summer writing and thought I had a finished product of about 30,000 words. And I'm a voracious reader, and it's like, this is not a book. And so I hired a writing coach, which are much more expensive than hiring coaches for one-on-one drills, I'll tell you that. And she helped me go through and just rewrite it. But I just thought it was too important. It was too valuable to not let people know that there's amazing journeys out there that are fun to share and can be inspirational. And these just, kids that were on this team and Caroline found will always be my heroes. They, and not only the girls that were on that team, even that whole school year, the weight of the school was on them. We had standing room only at our games. I mean, normally volleyball games, you get 25 people, and that's parents and grandparents, right? And the gyms were packed, and the kids, our student body and community were living vicariously through this team. That's how they were dealing with the grief. So the pressure and the weight on the shoulders of these young girls on the court was absolutely unbelievable. And they've gone on and they're doing amazing things with their life, which is not surprising.
I was going to ask you, are you still in touch with all the girls?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yep. Two of them went on and played for West Point and are in the Army right now. One, Kelly, who took Caroline's spot on the court as a setter, is a physician's assistant. We have a couple engineers, a pharmacist, a Division I coach. So they've all gone off, not surprisingly, and excelled as they moved on with life.
That's amazing. Now, a lot of people are going to be watching this interview. They're going to find out about the Miracle Season, and they're going to go over to Pure Flix. They're going to watch the film. In light of everything you've said, and you've given some amazing lessons, and so I don't, at risk of making you repeat what you've already said, but I think it's so important. At the end of that film, or if they grab your book at the end of the book, what is it that you want people feeling and thinking?
No matter what the odds, no matter how insurmountable things seem, the obstacles in front of you, if you can get through them. For us, we had to do it together. We were able to do anything as long as we were together. And when you have a collective spirit, a collective mindset, that you're going to overcome some obstacle, anything's possible.
Kathy, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us. I so appreciate that you've shared this story with the world and your heart. And thanks for just, again, bringing Caroline's story to the world.
You bet. It was my honor. And always remember, everybody, to live like lime.